Welcome to We Build Great Apartment Communities, the only show dedicated to the process and strategies for transforming apartment buildings to thriving communities. I am your host, John Brackett, and welcome to the show. Hey, this is John Brackett. Welcome to another amazing episode of We Build Great Apartment Communities, where our purpose is to take average apartment buildings and turn them into amazing communities and to improve how people live. I have here another great guest. His name is Manny Perez, someone who I think you are going to find very interesting. Purchases a multifamily property in various states, based out of Colorado. So I know this is going to be another great discussion. Let me introduce Manny. So Manny Perez is a full-time investor, co-owner of Blue Spruce Companies, which is based out of Colorado. And Manny's been investing since 2013 and understands a great investment when he sees one. So Manny is also a licensed real estate agent in the state of Colorado, experienced investor, and his focus with Blue Spruce is predominantly on the acquisition side. He does market research, underwriting, and then he also serves as transaction coordinator while the acquisition is being moved through the purchase process. So Manny, welcome to the show, man. I look forward to having a conversation with you.
Thank you for inviting me, John. I'm blessed to be here.
I like that. I feel blessed as well. Hey, so let's get into this conversation, okay?
Sure.
Give us your backstory really quickly. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Just kind of walk us through how you started and where you are today. And then we're going to transition into the conversation around raising money.
Sure, no problem at all. Before I got into real estate full-time, I used to be a probation officer. So I did this for 7 years, even found the love of my life. You know, I just got to a point where I just wanted something different. I started getting fed up of the industry, and it takes a specific somebody to really last in the criminal justice world. And I respect anyone that's in the criminal justice world, honestly. It really is, really takes a lot of patience and just a lot of things. So either way, I just noticed it wasn't for me. Wanted to get into something different. At the time, I had luckily already purchased, a couple investment properties. And I noticed that, real estate is really starting to help me right now. I wonder if I just jumped full-time into this, what I could do. So I really just took the leap of faith, the W-2 work, and went full 1099, went and got my real estate license, and
Nice.
was gonna be a realtor. And I also figured, hey, I like investing. Why don't I just start fix and flipping and educating myself around those circles?
What was the greatest lesson during that process, right? I mean, here's why I asked that question, because for many, taking that first leap of faith, as you put it, can be pretty daunting, right? Especially when you get used to a W-2 paycheck, man. It's steady, it's predictable. Well, in theory, that is. Steady, predictable, it's safe. Leaving that safety net, making that transition, what was the greatest lesson learned when you look back?
Greatest lesson learned, I had to learn it quick, was mindset. Always have a positive outlook. I had to understand what my minimum bills were. Like, hey, what needed to be taken care of? Luckily, we had some cash flow coming through. That was big. And like I said, that was turned the light bulb on for me is, hey, we should be getting into real estate. But it's really a mindset. I didn't have the most money in the world. So what did I have to do? I had to take some odd jobs on the side, but I still made sure that from 8 to 5, I was all real estate, and that was going to be my full attention.
Right.
So I think it was just a mindset thing that, hey, I'm going to make this work. We may fail a couple times, but we're going to learn from it, and we're just going to keep moving forward. And that mindset has brought me to where I feel like I am today, and just have continued to grow and grow.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about where you are today, right? What do you guys focus on? What have you purchased up until this point? And then what's the focus moving forward? Just to give our audience some perspective around, how you have transitioned and grown that very first investment property to what you're doing today. And then of course, where you're looking to take your company moving forward.
Sure. Definitely started around some fix and flipping. So done a few dozens of those. And after that, it transitioned into multifamily. Me and my partners decided to buy our first one, and it was a small deal. It was like
Right.
five units. And we've since have actually turned that property. So now we don't own it anymore. Either way, it all started from one little small property, and we just kept on building the momentum. And Now, the largest property we own is a little over 150, and a couple of my partners actually have a little over probably 2,000 units under them right now.
What was the reason for going passive versus, being active and pursuing opportunities for purchase and then operating those apartments?
Well, we still do active, right? So get a little bit of active income, take that money and make it work for you. So that was always the goal, do some active, and we still do active so we can still build that income. And eventually when we find the right deal, we can also go passive with that money.
Talk a little bit about the deal that you went passive in, right? Because I find that kind of interesting that an operator, you're also looking at passive opportunities. So can you share where was the property located, why you made the investment as a passive investor, what attracted you to that opportunity?
Mainly for a cash flow instance, just a deal out in Ohio, mainly just to have some mailbox money coming in. There's only 24 hours in the day, so you can't work all 24 hours. That's
right.
mainly the reason. So it's good to keep active money coming through, but eventually you just got to take some of that money, be willing to put it passive and see the fruits of that labor come. It could be 2, 3, 5 years, 10 years, whatever deal it may be. That one's specifically 5 years, but yeah, I think it's important just to take some of the money that you make active and let it go work for you.
Yeah, I really like that, man. And I think that's really smart. And that's a growth mindset, right? It's a growth mindset. So I'm going to recap a couple things that you talked about. Then we're going to transition into what I know is one of your favorite topics, which is raising money. Okay. So I'm going to highlight a couple things, Manny, that you said. So, some of the key lessons that you talked about was mindset, number one. When you made this transition, how important mindset was to create success in this business. And the things that you touched on found really interesting. And that was just approaching your day-to-day requirements with a positive mindset. Okay. And I think being positive, we hear that a lot with successful just entrepreneurs in general. But,
Sure.
I think having a positive mindset is really undervalued, especially right now, right? I think people are seeing how important that is with just the chaos that we're running into and all the various opinions. So mindset one, you talked about budgeting, the importance of budgeting, right? Knowing how much money was coming in, how much was going out, especially when you're starting out, and be able to create a budget and maintain a budget to be able to sustain yourself until you grew into a place where you are today, right? Where you have income coming in and you can continue to focus on larger opportunities. And then lastly, it's, keep your money working, right? So when you have additional reserves, there are always ways to be able to make money inside of real estate, whether it be actively or passively. And the comment that you made there that really stood out to me is, hey, look, even though you're purchasing as an operator and always looking for opportunities, you're ultimately looking to take available cash that you have and put it to work, right? To deploy it, to make sure you're getting a return on that. And that's a huge lesson, man. That's a great lesson for folks listening out there. At the end of the day, what this business is really about, it's about taking excess liquidity that you have, right? Reserves that you have, and constantly finding ways to get that money active towards generating, a return on that investment, right? And so I really appreciate you sharing that. I think those are great insights. So I'm going to transition now to the topic that we were talking about before we started this call, which is raising capital, right? And of course, I think something big in any industry, but especially in the real estate world, because we're not buying vacuum cleaners, right? They're not very cheap. Real estate requires a lot of capital, but it also requires tact. And I really firmly believe this, a massive appreciation and respect for money, right? When you can have respect for money, especially because you're investing on behalf of other people, extraordinarily important, right? Because at the end of the day, we're influencing how people live, right? When we're deploying capital. So talk a little bit about, some of the things that you've come to learn and understand thus far around raising money and investing that money on behalf of investors.
So it's definitely getting the trust of your investors. So you're always looking to build up your credibility. But I mean, it's just being completely honest. And whether it's stuff that's going good in the property, stuff that's going bad, investors understand that any investment's risky. So regardless, they just want to know what's going on in every aspect of the deal. And
Right.
to me, obviously you don't want to lose any money. It's our goal. That's the one thing you don't want to do. You'll do anything you can to make sure investors don't lose money and that they make the returns, because ultimately you want them investing in more deals that you're going to do.
Sure.
So we do everything we can to make sure the investors are taken care of. And we report definitely monthly, quarterly. We're always in touch with our investors, just letting them know what's going on. If something came up, hey, this is what came up and this is how we're going to handle it. So,
Okay, awesome. Awesome. So talk now about the distinction between, and this is from a capital raising viewpoint, right? So you talked
sure.
about attracting capital versus chasing capital.
Yep.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about that and help create that distinction?
So not chasing it, but attracting it. So always being out there, letting people know what you do. It's about establishing a brand. It's about communicating to your ideal client avatar, getting them to basically always see you. One of my partners has a podcast, and that's the beautiful thing. We have some team members. So I have a couple partners that I'm a part of this company with, and we all have different roles. And so, like I said, I'm more of the acquisitions guy. Some of my other partners are more of the branding, getting ourselves out there. And so we have a podcast. We put on events. We put on community networking events. We're always out there. We're always out in front of the public. I think that's one way is to get people to attract to you is you're teaching them something, you're giving them value. They want to know more about you. That's what we do.
Let's talk a little bit about, the sources that you've learned to be the
Sure.
most productive for you guys, right? For your company. So, when we talk about marketing, when we talk about attracting capital and staying out there, that can mean a lot of different things, right? It could mean
Yep.
email, it could mean, video communication, it can mean Facebook groups, it can mean Facebook, Instagram, communicating through different social sites. It can mean via podcast, right? But I think ultimately it's finding ways to communicate a message. We're adding value to an audience. So inside of this space, what has worked for you? What has worked for your company the best so far? What has been your most productive medium through which you're attracting your ideal client, right?
Yes, I would say it's the people that don't have the man hours to do what I'm doing, to be out there market researching, finding deals. It's going to be like your doctors, your lawyers. It's going to be people that don't necessarily have the time to be active, but they have the money. Those are, the people you definitely want to talk to, guys that they can't do this themselves. They don't see that they have enough time. And you want to be able to solve a problem for them. And that's how you're going to give them value. You're going to say, hey, well, look, I got great opportunity for you. And I'm always posing something as an opportunity because that's what it is. And I think that's a good way to relay to somebody like, oh, yeah, I need to see what this opportunity you're posing to me. So always an opportunity and trying to figure out what problem they're having and how we can solve it, and how we can solve it by giving them above average turns on their investment.
Okay, so talk a little bit then about the mediums that work the best for you. Are you getting people reaching out to you through Facebook? Is it through Instagram? What is your number one medium so far?
I'm going to say probably social media. LinkedIn is a great source. You can find a lot of professionals in that area. My target audience, I'm looking for brokers and lenders and guys like that to team up with me. Other people on my team are looking for more of the ideal client avatar that I just said, your
Sure.
doctors, lawyers. We all have a game plan, how we're going to find you, how we're looking to communicate.
Okay,
So,
got it. So it makes sense. So it sounds like what your company has done is, you have partners, everybody has a specific role. Everybody is very focused around their specific role, but ultimately everybody in aggregate, right,
yep,
is creating or attracting an audience based on the very specific things that they're doing.
absolutely.
So you guys really are doing a lot of different things, right? You're touching a lot of different mediums to be able to attract ultimately who you want to work with. So I really appreciate the summary. I have to unpack this stuff so our audience has a really good feel for the different ways to approach this business, right? One of the things that you talked about earlier, which I want to get into, you talked about capital, attracting capital. You gave some examples there, but then you talked about problem solving, right? So when you're approaching somebody and it's somebody that you feel may have an interest in investing in your opportunity, it's really understanding what problems that they're having and how you can solve those problems. And the way you put it is with an above average return. Share with our audience, what are some of the common problems that you see people are having that you've been able to solve with an investment, right? Or cash flow from an investment?
Yes. It's just really digging deep and seeing if they're the right fit for your investment, right? All investments are different. Some are more value add plays that may take a few years before you start popping cash flow. Others might cash flow day one. So I think it's just understanding what your potential investor needs and wants and seeing if you can put your deal and them together, getting to know your investors and understanding, basically what they need. Do they need cash flow now? Can they wait 5, 10 years? Maybe this is like a late college fund for their kid and they just want to see it grow. It's
Right.
just a lot of different things.
Awesome. I like it. You're really moving past the return, it sounds like, and you're really trying to understand why they're looking to generate a return in the first place.
Sure.
Okay.
I want to build rapport because if once we've built rapport, most people are likely to want to invest with their friends. And I always like to say that anyways, when people ask me what I do, well, I'm a multifamily syndicator and what we do is we partner up with our family and friends to come invest in properties. And it just sounds very genuine. It is genuine. I mean, that's who we are.
Right.
And we want to be friends with them anyway. But I think the most important thing is you got to build rapport with your investors because then they feel comfortable with you.
I agree, man. And that's really smart. I like how you're approaching the business. So, if you could describe how are you different from every other syndicator out there, what would that be? What would that look like, right? You've talked a little bit about how you position your company for capital, the team approach that you have, ultimately really trying to understand what problems to solve, which I think is great. But as a business, how do you find that you guys are different from a lot of the other, operators out there, syndicators out there? What do you feel differentiates you or your company rather from what you see out there in the marketplace?
I just think we're genuine. We're genuine. We're honest. We are, if we don't feel that a deal is the type of deal that we first thought, so sometimes you get stuff under contract and you go through the due diligence and we're not going to close deals just to close deals. So, this deal has to make sense. We want everyone to make money. And the last thing we ever want to do is lose investor money. So if it doesn't make sense, we've canceled deals before. Like you said, we're not trying to just close deals, close the right deal. And anyone that gets involved with us, I want them to feel like they can trust us and that when they do give us their money, that they're going to get what they expected to get.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback, man. I appreciate the feedback. What are some of the challenges that you've seen out there with other syndicators? I hear varying stories, right? We all do. Real estate is a business just like any other industry where you just have great opportunity, massive opportunity. And with that opportunity also comes its equivalent challenges, right? So what are some of the challenges that you see other syndicators running into in the marketplace and why?
You know what? I'll say this. This might have been one of our bigger failures at one point in time. So
Okay.
I'll be willing to share that.
Sure.
Is I still think some people make mistakes when they're trying to raise money or maybe partner with the wrong person. We have done something like that. I'm not going to name names or anything, but in my opinion, for specific roles, we may have partnered in with somebody and it didn't turn out to be after vetting them, it was probably the wrong move. And so sometimes I think when partnering with the wrong people, I see that a lot and that deals can go bad.
Manny, let's talk about that experience. Let's unpack that, man, because that's where the golden nuggets are, right? The golden nuggets are in the learning, man. They're in the learning. And just like how they are in the successes, I've learned tons from the mistakes that I've made. And I think that's really the only way to keep moving forward because every day we're making, little mistakes and we're dialing that stuff in, right? It's just part of business, part of life.
Right.
And it's learning how to approach those challenges and unpack the lessons learned and then convert those into opportunities, right? So walk us through that scenario, okay, with the partnership. Why did you decide on that partner to begin with? What was the motivating factor behind that? And then when did you realize that it wasn't the right partnership, right? Why? Okay. And then, man, what did you learn from that so that now when you're pursuing partnership opportunities, you understand how to apply that lesson moving forward, right? What did that look like? Walk us through the playbook, man, of partnerships, okay?
All right. Well, I'll let you know in this specific instance, we were going after our largest deal yet. Loved the deal. And it was going to take a significant capital raise. And so we were like, okay, how are we going to go about this? We had an idea of how many accredited investors we had and how many non-accredited in our network. So we're looking, we're like, well, can we possibly raise this? And we felt good, but we felt like, you know what, it might be helpful if we have another operator maybe come partner in with this because it's a big deal. And this happens a lot. A lot of syndicators partner up with other operators, other groups, and everyone comes together and they raise the money and they property. So in this instance, we were thinking, hey, maybe we could partner in with somebody. What we didn't do is completely vet out that certain party. And what it ended up doing is we believed that they were going to be able to take on a good portion of the raise. It just didn't work out well. And to tell you the truth, unfortunately, we ended up losing out on this deal. So it was a really hard lesson learned because I thought it was a great property. And because we had messed up partnerships a little bit, it cost us a deal.
So when you say you messed up partnerships, what does that mean?
I'll just be honest. Yeah, it ended up being to a point. We liked the deal. We knew we needed some probably help on it. And that's what you're always looking to do. You're always looking to figure out how can we raise this property. And in this instance, and like I said, everyone fails, but we learn from it. We move forward.
Right.
In this instance, we realized that we were going to have trouble raising the rest of the amount that it was. And had we maybe vetted this person out, maybe we wouldn't have went with that person. Maybe we would have looked at some other operators to come partner with us and someone that was qualified to take on this raise with us.
Sure.
That makes sense. So
yeah, no, it does. It does. So man, that's a great lesson, right? That's a great lesson because operators have different levels of expertise.
Absolutely.
Different skill sets. And in the world of private equity, which is a very big world, it's also a small world, right?
Very true.
Because, we don't have access, for example, when you don't have a track record of raising money or doing deals, we're limited to some degree to the networks that we create and maintain and nurture over the course of our careers, right? So in many cases, we are as strong as our networks and of course the results from the properties that we operate, right? Those results. And the greater the results and the more we generate and perform, for our clients, our investors, the wider that network gets, right? And so, in this case, sounds like the partner that you guys decided to work with initially, their network wasn't as strong as they led you on, right? That
I would say that's fair to say. Yes.
It wasn't as strong. So that usually implies that the performance wasn't there prior, right? That they didn't have the history, et cetera, the operating history, the performance history. Okay, and consequently didn't have the network that they talked about. So here's the big question. What was the lesson, man, that you've learned from that about qualifying partners, right? How do you vet out partners now, next opportunities that you pursue, not only now, but moving forward? What was the big takeaway there, and how are you applying that moving forward?
Sure. No, it's background check. It's getting references. We want to see what your portfolio is, show us how it's even performing, things like that. And, we like to definitely vet out who they've worked with in the past, again, how it's performing, those type of things. What I really learned from that, instead of blaming somebody else, that was on us. And how we took that was, you know what, we need to build something even bigger, and we need to think how we can get our company to attract more investors and have a stronger network, stuff like that. And we have been tweaking systems, doing all those things. So actually it ended up being a blessing. Maybe we didn't get that deal, which was unfortunate, but sometimes you learn more from your failures and you get to understand where your weakness was. So now we kind of understand, hey, what we have to do if we're going to partner with other people. But also, let's just take it upon ourselves and let's figure out how we're going to raise the capital on our next deal and how it's going to turn out okay. And so,
Yeah, man, I love that turnaround. But, I think really one of the biggest things that you said there that really stood out to me was just being 100% accountable for what happened then and where you are today. Because at the end of the day, here's a reality about being an entrepreneur, and more importantly, being the principal or the CEO, the president of your enterprise, is no matter how you look at it, every decision ultimately starts and stops with you, right? I mean, literally every single one. It starts with you, it trickles down, or it starts with your staff, but it's really a reflection of who we are as leaders, right? And I'm a really big believer, if you cannot be accountable for the things that are going on in your business and you're constantly blaming people, man, growth is literally impossible. You're not going to move beyond that challenge or that problem. I think, to be able to reflect on that as probably the greatest lesson is take full responsibility for where we are in our businesses, right? And it's really being willing to deal with the truth about where we are so we can grow beyond that, right? I've never seen any business, including my own, grow beyond the place where we're not willing to deal with the truth, man.
preach it, man. I agree. So
the truth will set us free, okay? But we got to deal with it first. But it starts with being accountable, right, man? So, man, I tell you what, that is $1 million lesson. For everybody listening right now, I can assure you that that's $1 million lesson if you can apply it. And the summary is just deal with the truth, right? Deal with the truth, accept it, be fully accountable to it. Because, I'll tell you this, right? A friend of mine, we're talking, and he said, hey, man, what is one of the most difficult things that you've had to overcome as an entrepreneur? And I go, man, what a great question, right? Because really that question applies to all businesses. The biggest thing when I look back on now that really drives growth and opportunity is being willing to deal with the truth in front of you, right? You got to deal with the truth.
Right.
As an owner operator, the easiest thing in the world to do is to what? To lie to yourself, because you're the owner, especially when you're starting out and you have 1, maybe 2 employees, right? If you're unwilling to sit down and really take an assessment of where you are and what's not working and be completely honest with yourself about what you're doing or what you're not doing for that matter, man, growth is almost impossible, right?
I agree.
We have to deal with the facts in front of us to be able to move beyond that, right? If we're not willing to deal with the truth in front of us and take full responsibility for that, completely impossible to grow an amazing business. And so I'm pretty passionate about that, as you can see, but I think that's a huge lesson. So, man, we're approaching the end of the show, but can you just summarize maybe some of the 1 to 3 things that over the course of your business you've had to be honest about in order to grow? You gave a great example of that partnership that you can share, because there are going to be a lot of nuggets in that around just, hey, these are the things that I really had to take a look at from when we started that has allowed us to grow today.
Yeah, I would say, well, one, brand, you got to have your personal brand. So it needs to speak to people. They need to be able to find you, all those things. Second, I would say is don't be afraid to grow, like you just said. For a while there, you get the excuses. Oh, I don't know if I can afford an employee. I don't know if I can afford a VA or something like that. Thing is like you can't afford not to. So that's a lesson right now, is all the little minuscule tasks, get those taken care of.
Delegate them out.
Get them out, because you need to be doing the $1,000 hour work, $10,000 hour work, not the $10, $20 hour work. So
right.
Those are 2 things. And you said the third one, I would just say, network, man. You got to network out there. You got to constantly be out place and get people to know you.
Manny, you've been a tremendous guest, man. You really have. And this is really a valuable conversation. I really like this conversation because I think it was real. And a lot of the information shared is very practical, right? Especially when you're scaling an enterprise and you start looking to acquire larger assets. So what would be the best way for people to reach out and
Absolutely. You can reach me by email. So I'll give you my email. It's Manny, that's MANNY, at Real Blue Spruce. And so that's real as in real estate, and blue spruce is the tree.
Real Blue Spruce, right? And we were just talking about being real, man, being honest, telling the truth, right? So Manny
At realbluestruth.com.
Manny the Truth Perez. Hey, man, you've been a tremendous guest. I appreciate being on the show. I feel this has added really a lot of value to people because a lot of the information here, it's practical, right? And it addresses the entire cycle of this business, which is acquisitions, right? We talked a little bit about financing, management, managing your business. And then lastly, we didn't talk about dispositions, but what we did do is we talked about just the little things inside of that circle that will allow you to deal with the truth and scale beyond that, right? So I'm going to recap some of these things. So the first thing was mindset, the importance of mindset. Second was budget, the importance of budgeting, especially when you're looking to scale, to know what's coming in and what's going out. And one of my favorites, man, is constantly finding ways to deploy your capital, right? Keep your capital working for you. Whether you do that actively, you do it passively. I do the same thing. I lend out my own money, right? In this case, our corporate dollars, always finding ways to generate the best return on investment. Then you talked about being accountable and how important being accountable is, right, to being able to scaling beyond where you are today, because if you can't deal with the truth today, you're not going to be able to deal with the truth tomorrow, and ultimately you stay stagnant. Then
Right.
You shifted into branding, right? The importance of branding and building a brand that people can trust and admire, and not being afraid to grow, taking that next step, being willing to just take that step and grow. And then lastly, you finished with expanding your network. Manny, thanks again, bud. You've been a tremendous guest. Appreciate your insights, and I wish you continued success, all right?
Hey, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate
Anytime,
it.
man. Thank you. Clarity of purpose creates our greatest competitive advantage. When we transform apartment buildings to thriving communities, we improve how people live and create assets with high profit margins. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this up with a friend. I'm John Brackett, bringing you things you can implement right away.